In recent videos, we've been looking at other CB type allocations across the world, starting with 934 MHz CB in the UK, the Freenet VHF service in Germany, and 903 MHz in Japan. So today we'll be looking at the Australian UHF CB allocation. It is a class licensed citizens band radio service that was allocated by the governments in Australia, New Zealand, Vanuatu and Malaysia in 1977.
You're definitely more annoying than the shit's been playing, because there's no conversations going on, so who cares?
Even know what's happening, I just hear you arguing with each other. I'm not playing anything, I'm just listening.
I'm not playing anything, no. Western suburbs are full of weak cunts for letting you wreck the repeater for everyone else, Cameron. So, that's alright. Your details have been passed on to the authorities. So, if you're still around by Monday, I'm going to come and rip that antenna down, alright? Got till Monday to pull that antenna down. Alright? If it's not down by Monday when I come around there, I'm ripping it fucking down. You could have a fucking million Broady boys there. I'll go through the lot of you. Can I have a conversation with someone? You're going to talk over me.
CB radio is commonly used in Australia because in large portions of the Australian outback there is no cell coverage. The frequencies for the service sit in the UHF 477 MHz portion of the spectrum between 476.425 and 477.4125, and it utilises 80 channels, with 32 of those allocated to repeater stations, 16 for the input channels and 16 for the output channels. Class licensing basically means that users don't have to apply for a license or pay a license fee, but they do have to comply with the regulations of the class license set out by the ACMA. Radios designed for the band are similar to commercial land mobile two-way radios, except the maximum legal output power is 5 watts. External antennas are permitted, and commercially manufactured antennas offer gains as high as 12 dB. Handheld transceivers are also allowed to be used and have a transmit power as low as 500 milliwatts up to 5 watts, which is the maximum legal power. It is illegal to use non-standard radios purchased from overseas because they are said to interfere with the licensed land mobile services. This includes overseas personal radio service devices because they don't share the same band plan, power output and channels as UHF CB. Care must be taken when importing radios from overseas to ensure they comply with local regulations. Approved radios are identified by an Australian standard CTIC, usually found on the tag or sticker on the radio. Many UHF CB radios are manufactured to allow the user to scan through the channels to find a conversation, and several different scan modes can be used. The first one is Open Scan, which scans all 80 channels and stops on an active conversation. Some radios allow skipping of selected channels when scanning, which is known as lockout. Group Scan scans a small number of selected channels. For example, a caravanner travelling around the country may choose to group scan channel 40, the road channel, channel 18, the caravan channel, and channel 5, the emergency channel, so they'll hear any conversations from like-minded travellers. And finally, Priority Scan allows selection of a priority channel while scanning a handful of selected channels. This could be useful in a convoy of cars where vehicles can set their own convoy channel as a priority channel while scanning the designated road channel for traffic updates. If a member of the convoy speaks, the radio will always switch back to the priority channel, even if someone is speaking on another channel. Selective calling or cell call allows a radio to call another radio using a sequence of tones, usually in the form of a series of 5 numbers. UHF CB radios can be set to be completely silent until they receive a series of tones, matching a pre-programmed sequence. Radios which have this feature usually indicate that a call has been received by emitting a number of beeps and by opening the squelch. However, in recent years, the popularity of cell call has dropped since the introduction of CTCSS, or Continuous Tone Coded Squelch System. This allows a group of radios set with the same tone to converse on a channel without hearing other radios using that channel, providing they're not using the same CTCSS tone. The use of CTCSS is for simplex operation only and is not permitted on UHF CB repeaters or the designated emergency channels. Repeaters extend the range of a transmission by receiving and automatically rebroadcasting a transmission using an antenna located in a high location, normally the top of a mountain, tall building or radio tower. Repeaters are on channels 1 to 8 and 41 to 48, and the duplex button should be pressed on the radio to access them. And to actually run a CB repeater, you need an apparatus license from the ACMA. VMB4 is an example of a UHF CB repeater that was located 1 kilometre from Mount Sugarloaf on the Sugarloaf Range in Newcastle, New South Wales. From this location, VMB4 provided fantastic coverage from Bulladella in the north to Gosford in the south and as far west as Singleton with minimal black spots. The repeater was located on the Oscom Communications Tower, which also hosts the Newcastle node of the VKS 737 four-wheel drive network, as well as the Radtel Outback telephone service and the Coast Guard radio service. Due to the owner of the Oscom Communications site passing away, VMB04 was relocated to Nelson Bay and is now licensed as ELS02. This site is now active with very good reports heard from all over the Great Lakes and Port Stephens areas, right out to Raymond Terrace, Maitland and some of Newcastle. The voice ID plays every 30 minutes, which is a recording that identifies the call sign and location of the repeater. SYD01 is a UHF CB repeater located in Hurstville, a suburb of Sydney. It was owned and operated for 10 years by long-time controversial CB operator and enthusiast Jason Daniels, who is also known as JD. JD's voice could be originally heard on the SYD01 voice ID and call sign announcement every 10 minutes. There was also a quack sound on the D key tail. The quack was known as Chuck the Duck. JD was quite important in CB radio in Sydney, and he had been the driving force behind several other well-known repeaters such as VMG3 at Razorback and VMC4 at Port Kembla, as well as VMB7 Mount Bindo, which was never commissioned. He was also involved in an Australia-wide transportable UHF CB repeater licence to operate from channels 1 to 8. Jason also provided a voice call sign sample for VMB4 in Newcastle. At one point in time, it was said that he held a monopoly on CB repeater licences in Sydney, as he owned 3 repeaters, all within 100 kilometres of each other, at a time when no other licences were available. And he's also a licensed amateur radio operator. SYD01 provides coverage of the entire Sydney basin, with contacts reported from as far south as Wollongong and beyond, and as far west as Jenolan Caves and up to the central coast. The following channels are legally allocated as part of the UHF CB class licence. Channels 5 and 35 are the designated emergency channels in Australia, Vanuatu and Malaysia. In New Zealand, if you use the UHF personal radio service for an emergency, you rely on somebody listening on the same channel. Channel 9 is the designated emergency channel in Malaysia. Channel 11 is the calling channel and is only to be used for initiating calls with another person, who should then move to another vacant channel to continue their conversation. Channels 22 and 23 are only to be used for telemetry and telecommand. Packet data and voice transmissions are not allowed. Channels 61, 62 and 63 are reserved for future allocation, and transmission on these channels is not allowed. Now, there are a number of channels that aren't legislated as part of the class licence but are used for the following purposes by general consensus. Channel 10 is typically used by four-wheel drive clubs when in convoy and in national parks. This channel is used to avoid interfering with road safety communications on channels 29 or 40. If you are not in a convoy, it is recommended that only 29 or 40 are used. Channel 18 is the campers and caravan convoy channel, typically used by travellers. Channel 29 is the road safety channel on the M1 Pacific Highway between Tweed Hills and Newcastle in New South Wales. It is now commonly used due to one transport company who travelled this road who always used to use this channel. Other drivers came down from Channel 40 to Channel 29 to talk to them, and it just became custom. This custom continues to this day despite the original transport company no longer existing. Channel 40 is the primary road safety channel Australia-wide and is most commonly used by trucks, including pilot or escort services for oversized loads. And channels 31 to 38 and 71 to 78 are the input channels for repeaters, and these should not be used to avoid interfering with repeaters. On May the 27th, 2011, the channel spacing on UHF CB was changed, allowing the band to expand from 40 channels to 80. Due to data channels 22 and 23 occupying 25 kHz of bandwidth, the expansion effectively allows the use of 77 channels, as channels 61, 62 and 63 are still reserved. Operation in the band is restricted to FM voice except for channels 22 and 23, which are data modes only. These can be used for telemetry and telecommand, but the AMCA doesn't allow packet radio or other types of data operation on the UHF CB band. As of January 2007, the maximum penalties for the misuse of the legally allocated CB emergency channels are 2 years imprisonment for an individual committing general misuse, or a $165,000 fine can be issued in minor cases. Interference to an emergency call can lead to 5 years imprisonment for an individual, or a $550,000 fine. Now, unfortunately, like with many other free radio services, the UHF repeaters and simplex channels are open to a lot of abuse, and this sometimes leads to repeaters being switched off or physically vandalised. So that is an overview of the Australian UHF CB allocation. Although it does seem to be abused, it looks like it's a well used and busy service for such a wide variety of users.